Yeah. Uh-huh. OK. Yeah. Right. OK, yeah. I f***ed your granddaughter. All right. Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching Screenwipe, a programme all about television. You know, a lot's happened since we were last on air.
Jesus Hussein Christ was elected leader of the free world, the economy disappeared, more on that later, and perhaps most significantly of all, the Whisper Bar was relaunched.
But none of these events really captured the public's imagination like one other thing, one very stupid thing.
I'd like to apologise for these terrible attacks, Andrew Sachs. I'd like to show contrition to the max, Andrew Sachs.
Yes, Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand made a deeply misjudged prank phone call to National Treasure Manuel Sachs, which was so hilarious thousands of people were confused by its sheer brilliance and reacted by getting angry instead. The resulting row had everything: outrage, swearing, a satanic slut, and a long-haired Dickensian dicking machine. It also highlighted a yawning generation gap that threatened to tear the nation asunder. Spunky 5 News went to a place where they know what's funny to prove old people hated it.
After all, this town was the setting for the TV show Last of the Summer Wine.
I won't say it disgusts me, really.
I think they should be sacked.
Whereas irritating young people couldn't see any problem with it at all.
They both apologised. They said that there's a paltry apology, but they're comedians, they kind of don't apologise properly anyway.
For several surreal days, the story was draped all over the news like a silly tarpaulin. Even when Manuel himself tried to calm things down, it continued to shunt lesser stories down the agenda.
He accepts the men's apologies and does not wish to take the matter any further.
I'm not going to take it anywhere. I'm not out for revenge or anything like that.
Also tonight, tens of thousands of refugees on the move across eastern Congo.
Yeah, whatever.
This was a perfect storm which largely rolled out of control because the BBC was too slow to act. Well, come on, it did happen in half-term week after all. It left a vacuum in which the papers had a field day. But why did they bother? Well, apart from hating Jonathan Ross and the licence fee and young people like Russell Brand, there's another reason.
Newspapers are a dying format. What with the internet and 24-hour news channels, no one really reads them for news anymore. That's why there's more emphasis on opinion, celebrity gossip and, crucially, campaigns. And a campaign against television is the gift that keeps on giving.
I work in both papers and TV, so I feel I can say with some authority that the papers are full of it. They fill their pages with shit and garbage on a daily basis, padding out their sad, obsolete little platforms with scaremongering, bigotry or life-wrecking scandal stories or fusty preaching or intrusive photographs of some pop starlet lurching out of a nightclub at 2 a.m. with her tit hanging out of her blouse, taken by some fat-ass paparazzi scumbag you wouldn't even want to shake hands with in case his peeping Tom shitter he was somehow catching. They actually pay these massive arseholes, and then they've got the temerity to turn round and have a pop at TV the minute anything vaguely untoward appears on screen. Well, f*** 'em.
Having tasted blood, some corners of the press became hungry for more. Suddenly everything of questionable taste was fair game as they cried foul over almost every other youth-skewed comedy show on television. Things reached a surreal nadir when Director General Mark Thompson had to go on Newsnight and listen to Emily Maitlis recounting lines from Mock the Week.
I'm now so old, my pussy is haunted.
In days of yore, viewers who were offended by something used to call the station and leave messages which were duly entered into the duty log for producers to laugh about the next day.
Or they joined Mary Whitehouse's Clean Up TV campaign, in which case everyone laughed at them.
But viewers today have grown accustomed to influencing TV directly thanks to exciting models of democracy like the X Factor, giving them the right to choose between a paunchy howling cabaret dad and a peeled Jamie Oliver fetus. As a result, thousands of joyless crybabies have learned to treat the whole of TV as a reality show in which they can vote off the things they don't like by complaining to Ofcom whether they saw the offending broadcast or not. Before long, they're going to want special complaint buttons on their remotes.
I saw something bad on the telly. Wow! I didn't even actually see it, but I read about it and it looked bad, so wow!
That's why even a harmless joke from Jeremy Clarkson about the merciless slaughter of sex workers can provoke a media storm.
Change gear, change gear, change gear, check your mirrors, murder a prostitute, change gear, murder. That's a lot of effort in a day.
The trouble with all this is that if we're not careful, TV, and the BBC in particular, might overreact in a bid to placate the mooing mob, and one misjudged phone call could end up being used as a stick to beat all TV comedy with.
The Beebs promising to take a look at the way edgy shows are vetted prior to transmission, and that might affect all comedy output, including this show. But there's nothing new about tasteless shock humour, as a trip to 1970 will verify. Monty Python delighted in pushing the boundaries, even mocking audience outrage at their own show in this gloriously tasteless sketch in which John Cleese visits an undertaker to arrange his mother's funeral.
Well, there are three things we can do with your mother. We can burn her, bury her, or dump her. Dump her? Dump her in the Thames. What? Where is she?
Oh, she's in this set.
Can I have a look? She looks quite young.
Yes, she was.
Fred! Yeah? I think we've got an eater.
What?
I'll get the oven on. Right.
Are you suggesting eating my mother?
Yeah. Not raw, cooked.
I really don't think I should.
Look, tell you what, we'll eat her. If you feel a bit guilty about it afterwards, we can dig a grave and you can throw up in it.
See, absolutely horrible, and that was 38 years ago. If the broadcaster had been prissy, we'd never have seen Python, just like we'd never have seen any of the following.
The grimy humour of Steptoe and Son.
B-U-M bum.
And just look at that bald. It's disgusting.
The groundbreaking satire of Not the 9 O'Clock News.
Savage, why do you keep arresting us? He's a villain, sir. A villain.
And a jailbird, sir.
I know he's a jailbird, Savage. He's down in the cells now. We're holding him on a charge of possession of curly black hair and thick lips.
The anarchic silliness of the young ones, shot at a time when the mere sight of a tampon was shocking.
It's a telescope! A telescope with a mouse in it!
Near-the-knuckle sketches in the day-to-day.
Oh, she like a metal dick in my head. Magazine like a big testicle gland.
You gotta kill people to have respect for people.
Or the potty-mouthed political humour of the thick of it.
I will remove your iPod from its tiny nano sheath and push it up your cock. And then I'll plug some speakers up your arse and put it on shuffle with my fucking fist.
Start censoring or even self-censoring and you can wave goodbye to all of that. Yes, there's a lot of lame shock humour around, but that's the price you pay for freedom of speech, and in my view, it's a price worth paying. So next time a raging crowd starts complaining retrospectively to Ofcom, how about establishing some kind of counter-complaint system by which those who aren't offended can cancel out each complaint with a counter-complaint of their own? Who knows, we might sail somewhere close to sanity, together, as a people, in metaphorical boats. That's the end of this bit. How is another bit?
You know, it's reassuring that in this morally bankrupt age of sweary shock TV, there are still corners of the schedule where you can find wide-eyed sweetness and wholesome charm and music and dancing and infuriating little piss weasels. Britannia High is ITV1's stunningly similar take on the High School Musical formula, set in a version of London twinned with America. The show charts the fortunes of a gaggle of all-singing, all-dancing, irritant pipsqueaks as they perfect the art of Tupperware showbiz at School for the Performing Arts, unconvincingly overseen by the bank manager from the Nationwide ads.
Don't be a wannabe. Be who you want to be.
Yes, although it helps if what you want to be is a wannabe tit, because Britannia High isn't so much a school for the performing arts as an absolute hive full of grating show-offs which in any sane world would have its windows bricked up by the government before the self-satisfied inmates could get out and infect the rest of the population. It's like a spawning point for enemies in a video game. The sort of place you'd be happy to circle with frag grenades for about 6 hours, sending limbs flying through the air, finishing off the survivors with a railgun blast to the temple. As you may have noticed, the kids of Britannia High have been programmed to burst into song at the drop of a hat, blasting out saccharine tunes about how delighted they are to be alive at our expense. All coming over all self-pitying and staring up their own bums, musically speaking. The main characters, or targets as I like to think of them, are the squeakiest clean of the lot. There's Jez.
My name's Jez, and I'm a performer.
I think he's the gay one.
I need the audience's constant reassurance that, hey, I'm okay.
Then there's street kid, BB.
I'm BB.
I think he's the black one.
I'm fed up of feeling like the only way's down. So I'm here, looking up.
There's also bitchy Claudine, who's so pretty she actually makes me quite angry.
You're just saying that.
Airhead Lola, seen here impressing Richard Blackwood and Tim and Bob from Boyzone by treating them to a glimpse of Fanny. Lauren, the girl next door, assuming you live next door to a stage school, and Danny, the combined heartthrob and ball ache, who constantly looks like he's just wandered off the set of an 80s chewing gum commercial, failing to carry off a look that wasn't even fashionable then.
Actually, the show can't quite make up its mind about Danny. One minute he's a nervy, shy, nice guy, and the next he's behaving like the biggest shit-eating, posturing little bum balloon you've ever seen in your life.
I'm a man.
No, you're a
He's a man.
No, he's a
I'm a man.
No, you're a
He's a man.
No, he's a oh, forget it. To be fair, behind Danny's shallow exterior lies a shallow but faintly sad interior. He suffers from life-threatening dyslexia, a condition so serious he sometimes even has trouble remembering his next line.
What am I like?
Wicked.
Naturally, Danny initially tries to keep his condition a secret, which leads to much inner turmoil, subtly conveyed by having him stomp out of the room every few minutes. But of course, you can't run away from your problems forever, and sure enough, things come to a head during an on-stage Q&A with two members of Girls Aloud, which in the Britannia High universe is the equivalent of the Frost-Nixon interview. Danny's inability to read basic questions from a card prompts him to hold an entire song and dance routine inside his own head, musically exploring his inner turmoil.
The result is a sequence fraught with evocative symbolism as Danny dances through a psychodramatic landscape, conveying the dyslexic agony of being unable to spell words like was, or doing schoolwork in the shadow of a giant projected clock. Having vented his frustrations, suddenly he's back in the room, just in time to perform his signature move.
You know, I can relate to that, actually. I do that sort of thing all the time.
Where's the paper? Where's the paper? Where's the paper? I need to wet my palm!
One of the most depressing facets of the show is the way its characters worship mediocre real-life celebrities like villagers worshipping ancient gods.
The real stars are given cameos, not just Girls Aloud and Richard Blackwood and Paul and Ringo from Boyzone, but also some bloke from Corrie, and there's even a small background cameo from the late Heath Ledger.
And most exciting of all, Matt Willis from Busted.
I think your shoe's a bit ruined.
From Busted!
He's so dreamy. The way he chewed through a kangaroo's anus on I'm a Celebrity, oh, that's enough to make any girl go weak at the knees. Yeah, I wouldn't kiss him on the mouth if I were you. Anyway, a cornball rip-off it may be, but I feel a little bit bad knocking Britannia High, just like, well, like everybody else in the country. It's certainly not fair to blame the cast, who've been given a tough job to do, singing and dancing and grinning their way through an endless series of gruelling routines, apparently choreographed by a semaphore instructor with a 5,000-volt electrode attached to each bollock. Sometimes they're even forced to do routines in the street in front of a bewildered and apparently unimpressed public, which is such an excruciatingly embarrassing thing to do to the poor sots, they might as well have given them a full rectal exam in a shop window. Anyway, ultimately, Britannia High is either a harmless, cheesy romp, or a hollow attempt to perpetuate the myth that becoming famous for skittering around peeping spunkless, mock-emotional pop songs through your facehole is the single most important goal a human being can aim for. And everyone knows that's rubbish. Having your own low-budget show on BBC4 where you sit around and you pick holes in things, that is where true greatness...
And now never let it be said that this is not a cultural show. It is, and to prove it, here's the first of our regular poetry slot thing from Tim Key, the poet. I fucked that up.
So this is my first poem. It's about the whole furore, Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross, and the overreaction. Hello, Mr. Bwyers. I was just phoning to thank you for all the joy you've given over the years. From ever-decreasing circles, this is Wassy on the phone. And this bit is not made clear, so I'll just say that now. From ever-decreasing circles right through to the good life and your cameo in Frankenstein. My heartfelt thanks, and also Wassell's, and also the nation's. Wassell sat cross-legged in the corner, not having sex, and typing a gushing email to Wonnie Corbett, and in general being well-behaved. The producer, the young producer who was caught up in this turmoil, continued to knit June Whitfield a scarf. Do I call Broadbent? Wassy fawned. Bland cross-faded into the next track. Yes, said he. Yes, the media watchdog echoed. Call Broadbent, call Salis, call Sue Bloody Pollard, call Twigger, call the bloody lot. Wassy ran a manicured hand through his silken locks and psyched himself up. And he called the next national treasure on his list. All imagined. That was an imagined one.
The world as we know it might seem pretty stable, but it's got an unfortunate habit of changing in the click of an eye. Why, only this time yesterday we were all cruising along on the crest of an economic boom wave type thing. Houses were worth an average of £10 trillion, pricey high-tech gadgets were ours for the taking, and we thought bleeding nothing of shelling out 350 quid for a punnet of organic strawberries to feed to our cosseted and disgusting little offspring. Yes, literally everyone was absolutely loaded. Well, everyone apart from a few million poor people we like to belittle and demonise. Things was good. And then we woke up.
Having brought the world's banking system to the very brink of collapse, the credit crunch is now threatening whole countries.
Yes, because it turns out that was all a dream. Rather than an engine powering our prosperity and aspirations, the stock market was actually nothing but a bunch of silly made-up numbers floating in a bowl of dream juice. Suddenly we're all paupers and it's very, 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 very sad. The financial situation is so grim that even contestants on the depressing Scrabble for Pennies auction show Cash in the Attic are moved to bloody tears when their goods sell for more than they bargained for.
£410. Brilliant, that's really well done.
Not that any of that affects me, obviously, because I'm on the telly, and the telly is in great financial shape, right? Wrong. Even before the credit crunch became big news, TV was feeling the pinch.
The BBC, facing a below-inflation licence fee settlement, is making 1,800 employees redundant. The commercial networks aren't faring much better. Channel 4's had to slash its programme budget by 25 million and drop its digital radio streams into the dustbin, while ITV has axed 1,000 jobs and lopped 40 million off its budget.
What with all the belt-tightening that's going to be required, chances are TV will have to manage its budgets even more cautiously than usual.
Game shows won't change much because they're cheap already. Take the ultimately random cosmic ordering what's in the box guess-a-thon Deal or No Deal. That thing shoots several episodes in one day. Mr. Edmonds might change his shirt to confuse you, but otherwise no one's gone anywhere. In fact, you can even see the contestants visibly age over the course of the day. You might see fewer reality shows, partly because they're on the wane and also because they're not quite as cheap as you think. By their very nature, reality shows generate hours and hours of material, and that means hours and hours spent picking through footage of nobodies picking their bums in an edit suite. It's scripted shows that will be hardest hit, especially in an age when audiences have come to expect flashy effects-laden fare, such as family-friendly Merlin or car bomb-friendly Spooks.
Just to get even a basic scene shot, you're going to have to pay makeup artists, costume people, lighting and sound departments, set designers, people overseeing props and set dressings, location managers, a director, an assistant director, that's the person who actually shouts action most of the time, a director of photography, a cameraman, camera loaders, a focus puller, a gaffer, a best boy, and some sparks, that lot, basically, the electricians, a producer, a continuity brain, a catering truck, and some runners, and of course the actual bloody cast. Add that lot up across the course of an 8-week shoot, and before you know it, you're gazing in horror at a massive bloody bill. So what can you do to get costs down? Well, the easiest place to start is by changing the script.
Doctor Who manages a cunning trade-off between expensive spectacle and comparative thrift. Russell T Davies trades off an episode filled with CGI swarms of Daleks by writing a relatively subdued and therefore cheaper episode for inclusion elsewhere.
I recently wrote a script of my own, a load of zombie nonsense for another channel, and in doing so I learnt firsthand how budget constraints can force you to get a little creative. For instance, our zombies had milky white irises, which meant the actors had to be fitted with contact lenses. You're not allowed to use the cheap 25 quid ones for some boring medical reason about people being left blind, which meant we couldn't afford to kit out every single one with the special expensive eyes. The solution? Cast a selection of zombies, then reuse them again and again, wearing wigs or hats to make them look different. Sometimes unforeseen budgetary circumstances mean you have to rewrite scenes.
For instance, in the original script, this car was supposed to have a dramatic crash, but as the shoot approached, it became clear there wasn't enough money left to make that happen.
So instead of crashing, it did this.
I don't know where we are right now, do I?
Fuck! Clearly a massive improvement.
Left the bonnet.
Pop it.
The availability of your cast is another major and expensive headache. For example, we only had one day to shoot scenes with Davina McCall as a zombie, so on another day, some takes were done with a dummy at the window taking her place. Anyway, it turns out we needn't have spent any money at all because, in fact, all you need for proper spine-chilling horror is a fireplace, a book, and this man.
Good evening. I'm Paul Ross. Are your windows bolted? Are your doors locked? Let's hope so, because I'm about to open my big black book of horror.
Yes, Paul Ross's Big Black Book of Horror is a terrifying journey into the unknown for Paul Ross. I repeat, Paul Ross, a name that from this point on will be synonymous with timeless horror fiction.
Little Chapel Wedding by Kathleen Croft. I had got quite friendly with my new neighbour Janice and had helped her unpack the smaller boxes of belongings after she'd moved in.
TV doesn't come much cheaper than this. There's only 2 camera angles and the occasional cutaway shot just to liven things up.
I was sitting on the verge of the A426.
But largely it's just Paul Ross reading from a book in the style of, well, in the style of Paul Ross.
I'm desperate to know more, but I don't want to pressure her. If you don't want to talk about it, just tell me to shut up. No, it's all right. I don't mind you asking. I didn't want to bore you with it. You must think I've lost the plot. Don't be stupid. Why would I think that?
I say reading. Actually, he only glances at the book a couple of times every half hour. Luckily, none of that manages to detract from the panorama of raw, blood-curdling horror he manages to conjure up.
Oh, my God, I whispered. The place is haunted. I watched her glide to the door and disappear through it, just like they do in films.
The level of detail is stunning.
You know that because of Darren's night shift starting this week, I stopped over and brought the kids back myself to save Darren the journey up and down on Sunday evening? Yes, you stayed in that little bed and breakfast on the Mumbles, the one Harry and I and the kids went to last year. Well, on the Saturday morning, I walked round the village, but there was nothing much open. The seaside doesn't have a lot going for it in late October.
There's even more detail when it comes to describing the clothes.
And the ladies were all wearing little hats, tilted forwards over one eye, and their dresses were knee-length in a sort of flowery silk crepe de chine. And oh, you should have seen their shoes.
But I can't see them. Paint a picture with words, Paul.
Cuban heels, very heavy and sensible. They all wore white gloves and carried little pouch handbags.
What about the bridesmaids?
Just one bridesmaid, wearing a very shabby puff-sleeve dress in turquoise taffeta. The skirt had a narrow band of ruche inset just above the frilled hemline.
I think this story was written by Gok Wan. The stories seem to have a lot of common themes. For instance, most of the time, Ross is playing a woman, which I warn you, can be powerfully erotic.
To a girl raised in a neat little pre-war semi, 1589 East Willow Street, Cedar Bend, Iowa, was a dream come true. Oh, Mac, I sighed as we stepped over the threshold.
Yeah?
You're crazy about it, aren't you? I nodded and hurled myself into his arms.
Then what?
We'd better make an offer then, he said, and kissed me slowly and thoroughly.
Oh, don't stop talking, Paul. And of course, like all good horror stories, they build to a truly terrifying climax.
This experience has made me realise how much I still love Darren and that I should never have left him. So I rang him last night to see if he feels the same, and he does. The long and short of all this is, I'm going back to Wales, to Darren. More from my big black book of horror after this.
Anyway, God knows what they were thinking when they made this. I mean, seriously, who the hell's going to tune in just to watch some unattractive, increasingly paunchy and irrelevant TV presenter just sitting around on his own in his house, just talking and talking and talking?
And now, here's Lisa Tarbuck talking about something wet and furry and close to her heart.
When I was younger, I was slightly obsessed with Tales of the Riverbank, which is also known as Hammy Hamster. It's set on, funnily enough, a riverbank, and it's very idyllic, and it's a bit hobbity in that you've got, you know, Ratty or Hammy's house. I don't know, actually, if you ever see Hammy's house. But you've got Ratty's house with a little dock outside for him to moor his boat, and invariably you go inside and you see them planning an adventure or about to get up to something.
What is it? Oh, there's no time to explain now. Just forget about tea. We're going to GP's.
I think the main thrust of Tales of the Riverbank, there is an educational bit underneath, and it's mainly Hammy's got to learn something.
Are they building a gate? Or a fence? Or perhaps even a house?
I think I am partial to the slightly careless scenes where they put the boys in, you know, plastic no-engine jeeps or remote control ones. How the hell they got them to stay in there? I mean, these days you wouldn't be able to do it. Of course you wouldn't, and some might say rightly so. But there's sometimes that they just catch you in a way that can make you laugh your head off.
Hold on to your hat, Hammy.
Things like that onto those animals. I don't want to think about how they did it, but there's a particular shot of GP in a top hat on a sort of like a funny angle while he's being a photographer. That's just a little bit of magic. I think Hammy is my favourite character because he's a shy, retiring boy and a lot of questions to ask.
Why don't we have a picnic?
It was a dream of mine to maybe take him to Windsor Castle and let him loose in Queen Mary's doll's house. I hope I was a child when I watched this and I wasn't actually 17 or something. A bit obsessed and weird.
Oh no, that's all we've got time for this week on Screenwipe. And now, because we could do with some free publicity, here's a special offensive version of our end credits in case any of you feel like complaining to Ofcom. Please do. Good night.